Hello and welcome to Muse Jam Session Recording 163. My name is Dani Beaumont and I'm a product manager on the Adobe Muse team. Welcome to this week's Jam Session. I am joined by at least one fellow from the Muse engineering team, Greg. He's going to help me with chat today. And as usual, the agenda is if you have questions, throw it in the chat. We will do our best to answer them. If there's specifically questions for me, putting it in the presenter pod in the lower right-hand corner gives me a better chance of skimming over and seeing the questions. I'm going to go ahead and headlong in the beginning talk about what's new with Adobe Muse. Many of you know we announced a new release earlier this week, so I want to show you that. I'm pretty excited. But we will circle back and take a look at any of your other questions that I can answer during this hour. So with that said, I'm going to begin sharing my screen. Now you'll notice on the left-hand side, I'm giving you resources. These are links to some of the things I'm going to show you today. And I do not have an Evernote note this week. They're all pretty standard links. I just want to make sure you're aware of what's new that's out there. So to begin with, as I mentioned, across the board, the Creative Cloud was updated this week. We went live on Monday night late here in California. And there's so many terrific things from throughout the Creative Cloud. I'm getting a phone call, but I'm going to assume that's not related to my sound not working or something on this recording. So many things were delivered. In some ways for Muse, I always say we're kind of like a little sapling in a forest of redwood trees. It's hard to get sunlight and water when you have such incredible redwoods like Illustrator and Photoshop and InDesign. Nonetheless, this is an amazing release for Adobe Muse. So places you can go to learn about this, if you go to our product webpage, you'll notice it's been updated. There's a new splash screen, kind of carrying off on the Ike's Bikes theme, I think a little bit here. And in the landing page, there's a What's New tab. This is always a great way to see sort of the Wayback Machine, a time machine that shows you when the last release was, which was merely February, not so long ago, and what the major features are with each of those releases. So definitely a good place to hang out. Another one is Learn and Support. And this is driven by community content as well as from the Muse team. If you show all tutorials, there's some terrific content that is here for both advanced users and new users to the product. Ali Pordelli of Cookie.com is an amazing illustrator, and he's actually illustrated this Typekit illustration. There's also a few other CC Learn articles around how to use widgets in the application that has some Pordelli illustrations there as well. But checking out, for example, the new features tab is a good place to see this. You'll notice that we talk about some of the cloud integration points as well. So we can even begin with that. We announced Adobe Stock, which is a stock photography service. At the moment, there are two ways to access Adobe Stock. One is by simply browsing to the website, looking for an image, downloading it to your machine, and then placing it within an application. That's the approach you're going to want to take with Adobe Muse. We have not built a panel to integrate Adobe Stock, and there are some products that have done that. It's definitely something we're looking at, but you can absolutely access Adobe Stock if it's part of your Creative Cloud license, if you want to use stock images just for position only, as it's known, FPOs, as you're working on ideas, that's absolutely available to you as a Creative Cloud member with Muse, downloading those files. The next area is around beautiful typography. Before we jump in there, though, let's kind of keep doing our tour. So we always have kind of a play date with muse.adobe.com. It's a microsite. We built it back in the day just to show what Muse could do and to actually test ourselves around how difficult it was to build out content. And Muse turned 3 last month, so it has been shipping for those 3 years as a public shipping product. And in that time, this is our 12th update. So we had the initial release and 12 updates since that time. And we've covered a lot of ground. The landing page for the microsite shows off a little bit about Typekit and how Typekit integrates with the application. There's also some drop-downs here that step you through the individual features, but just a nice way to play and see Muse functionality. Towards the bottom, you can see some of the previous landing pages we've had around things like high DPI and scroll effects, so a nice playful way to see Muse in action. The Tutorials tab has been updated, and this is a nice place to land between here or CC Learn, depending on your preference, to see what is new with the application. So there's a section here. We have both videos that are streamed from Adobe TV, just for simplicity's sake, to make it a little more accessible. And there are also articles. The advantage to the article is that sometimes it takes a little bit of a delay, but that topic is covered in an article, in a written tutorial, and it's translated into all of the languages that Muse supports. So I think we're at about 18 languages at this point. So if English is not your first language, you can watch the video, but if you read the article, it may give you a deeper understanding of what we're offering. What's New has each of these broken out. And then there's also a brand new bucket here called Starter Designs. And this is an interesting take for us. If you are very new to Muse, this is a terrific tool for you. If you use Muse to teach other people, this is a terrific tool for you. We actually commissioned Ali Pordelli of Cookie.com to build out these 5 starter files. And to be clear, I will stand on my rules that say that the Muse team is better served by not delivering a lot of widgets and not delivering a lot of templates. We're best served by building a terrific application. I continue to say that's true, but we did feel a need to give brand new Muse users a sense of what can be done in Muse. When you open up the application, if you're new to it, you say File New, you see a blank canvas. And if you don't necessarily have familiarity with the product, it's easy to think that there's not a lot of capabilities there. So let's go ahead and start with these. I'm going to actually take a different approach to getting to them that I want to show you. So here in the Muse application, if I go to my Help dropdown to the Welcome screen, to be clear for a moment, this Welcome screen is being tested in English. So it's a North American implementation. You may not see it depending on where you are in the world, which is specifically why we've made sure these starter designs are on the microsite so that everyone can access them. But when you come into the Create tab of the Welcome screen, in addition to being able to create a new file or open up something that you've already had in the past, you have these starter designs available to you. So again, if you teach a class and you'd like to use these to get a new class oriented towards the tools, they're here. They're fresh at the moment, but they're a little like baked bread. So we definitely want to continue to add new content. We're testing to see the success of these starter files and how it seems to actually encourage users to publish their first site and continue to use the application. So fingers crossed, if that testing goes well, we'll continue to build these out. They're kind of interesting in their implementation. You can either click to open the file, and when I click to open it, it actually opens incredibly fast. What happens is when we install Muse, we actually install these files on your system. And clicking that really just creates a copy or a duplicate instance in your Documents folder. So each time you click that, it will create a new instance. We don't want to automatically overwrite anything you might have. But what we download is the Muse file and all of the assets associated with that file. Let me go ahead and show you where that lives. If I go into my Documents folder, got lucky here, notice that clicking that one starter file created a folder. I've obviously clicked it here before. You'll notice I have opened the exposure sample once before. So there's exposure 1. But for any one of these instances, there's the Muse instance and then all of the assets that are there. Now, the assets that we're delivering are really intended for you to understand how Muse works. You can use those assets. You can teach with those assets. They are licensed in a way that you can distribute them for the purpose of using the Muse design or teaching the Muse design. Now, these files are straight up, pretty clean, pretty straightforward. They're beautiful, but they're not the most complex starter files. Another way that you might want to work with them is in that welcome screen or in the starter file area, there's a link to a preview. So clicking the thumbnail or clicking, just the thumbnail allowed me to download the file. If I click on preview, it has kind of an interesting twist going on here. So it will load up that exposure file for me, and I can preview it in the browser, but there's kind of an interesting addition that we're testing as well. And that is kind of tooltip help. So what we did is, the intention here, to be clear, is not, since I'm the one teaching all this help content, it was not for me to teach you how to use Muse necessarily. It's more to teach a brand new user how to customize a template, in essence, how to create their own custom content using the existing structure. But what's nice is there's little 2-3 minute videos throughout the site that you can click on and watch in context here within the design to understand that customization. So there's about 50 videos across the 5 designs. And again, this is a bit of an experiment. You might guess it was kind of heavy lifting to implement. So we'd love feedback about how useful these are. Do you find that there's something that it's good to have? If you're in the private pre-release forum or the public forum, just kind of giving us feedback there about how these work for you would be great. So that is one of the Learn content that we have available. And those are here in that starter area. And again, they're on the muse.adobe.com tutorial section. Back up to the top, as I mentioned, there are a series of videos that take you through the major new functionality that we have with the product. And the biggest one for this release, probably the one that's most Creative Cloud oriented, and really I think moves the needle in terms of things that have never been done before, is the Typekit Premium font integration. The idea here is that, as you may know, we acquired Typekit probably 3 years ago. And one of the first things we did is worked with the Typekit team to build Edge web fonts. So pretty much a free library of open source fonts that are contributed from the community, many of which come from Typekit and Adobe. But it is a library of 500 web fonts, not web safe or standard fonts. So over 500 typefaces. And we've had that since we began shipping the application. Since that time, we've been cajoling the Typekit team and also kind of building up the resources on our end to build out deep, beautiful Typekit integration. And it's pretty exciting. And the purpose of a jam session in some ways is to kind of deep dive on some of these things. So there are quick videos that acclimate you to these, but let me explain a little bit about the magic that happens with Typekit fonts. So here I am in the application, and I've got this exposure site open. I'm going to go ahead and close that out for a moment. If I pull down under File to add or remove web fonts, we have a familiar interface for those of you that know Muse. I mentioned that we've had Edge web fonts. Let me go ahead and close this window. We've had Edge web fonts supported and the ability to access those fonts from within the application. We've also supported self-hosted fonts. You may have a typeface for a client that is specific that you need to have available, and you've licensed that typeface as a self-hosted font. The idea is that fonts are actually rather small in comparison to things like videos that are streamed to a website and such. So uploading the entire typeface as part of the FTP process to serve that font from your hosting platform can be absolutely fine, especially if it's a font that you don't have access to, let's say through this Typekit implementation. You can continue to download and self-host those fonts, and we've shown that in some of our earlier releases. The new news is this Typekit tab. So there are thousands of premium web fonts. We've also gone in and really improved the exploring or picking interface here within this Add Web Font window. So I'm on the Typekit tab, and on the selected fonts area, you'll see I've already gone in and selected 2 typefaces in the past. I've got Adele and Prenton Ultra Condensed. If I want to shop for some new fonts, I can click on All Fonts, and there's some subtle changes here around the interface. I think I just saw something come up from Laurel over there, so I'm going to make sure that we are thumbs up, all good. Oh, yeah, I'll get back to that one, Laurel. But yes, we will take questions towards the end for sure. So in this Typekit section, I can come in and shop for fonts. Some nice additions here. For any one typeface that I'm looking at, I can come in and see how many weights in a family. So I may be interested in Adele Condensed, let's say. By clicking on it, I can actually see all of the weights. So Adele Condensed has 16 weights. I can look at them here. You may notice these are rendering dynamically from that Typekit server. And this is a real beautiful feature. Nothing, our feet don't touch the ground, so to speak. These Typekit fonts do not have to be downloaded into the fonts folder of my device. They are dynamically rendering when I am looking at them here in this window. I can also come in and shop differently. So if I'm not sure what I want, I can come in and apply a filter. And that filter can come in for different classifications, sans serif, serif, slab font, for example, script typefaces. I can look for fonts that are recommended for body text or for headlines, and also click on individual properties. I love old style figures. It's one of my favorites. So being able to easily see old style figures that may have ascenders and descenders, I love the old style numbers, is exciting. So I can come in and do that. I can also come in, if I kind of take away these limitations, and just type in the words that I know. I might want condensed. So I'm looking for fonts that have condensed in the name. And you'll notice that this shoots across all the tabs. So 68 of the Typekit fonts have condensed in their title. 4 of the Edge web fonts do as well. So I can shoot across these libraries very easily until I see the typefaces that I'd like to select. So let's go ahead and pick something a little silly while we're here. So we've got Meritus condensed, and there's 3 weights there. I'm going to go ahead and add that. So I'm going to check the box saying I'd like to include them. And if I click over to the Selected Fonts tab, I can see there's my Meritus condensed and the Prenton Ultra condensed that I'm working with. At this point, the magic happens. So I'm going to click OK. And Muse very quickly is having a conversation with the Typekit server, and it's downloading a runtime instance of that Meritus condensed font family. Now, for those of you that have developed as a developer, a coder, using Typekit in the past, one of there are tricky aspects of Typekit. One is that you have to go into the Typekit interface and create a kit for any one foundry, any one font that you want to work with in your design. And it can be quite tricky. As you're creating that kit, they give you constant feedback around, as you add each weight into the kit, how many seconds, how many kilobytes of load time will you have to incur when people view your website with that many fonts being loaded as part of the design. The world's a little different with Muse in that I've just selected, I think it was Meritus condensed, and I think we said it had 3 weights at least. I'm not worried that I've downloaded a family of all 3 weights. Muse will keep an eye on the weights that I use. So if as a designer I want to be constrained around my Typekit instance and make sure the load time is very clean and fast, what I need to do is make sure not to select text and apply more fonts than I want to be loaded when the site loads up. So that's how I can control its load time. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And let's go ahead, I want to do something else here. I'm just going to pull that on File to New or hit Command N here and open up a new document. And I'm going to cheat a little bit because that's how I roll. Let's grab some text from the events area here. I'm going to copy this, come over into Muse and just grab it and paste it. So I have some text that I want to style now. And with it selected, I'm going to type T on the keyboard, or I could come over to the text tool here. And I'm going to select all of that text and go to my drop-down menu. Now you may notice we now have icons. I don't like the icons. Our engineer that implemented it, Abhishek, got so tired of me complaining about it, he gave me a preference in the preferences window to turn the logos off. They are very useful and informative for a while, but then I like to make them go away after a bit. But what you'll notice is we give you a very clear indication now of what is a Typekit premium font, what is a self-hosted font, and what is just a web font using Edge web fonts. So I can see it at a glance. I get a logo representation there. And what you'll notice is there are the fonts that I basically have defined as part of Adobe Muse. So I went in and said add or remove these fonts. Whenever I say File New, this is the default set I can expect to be there. So I can come in now and select that Meritus condensed and go ahead and select a weight for that font, and I can design with it. I just have to say that when I joined the Muse team, I had a passion, which is that Adobe is obviously the world leader in typography and typesetting and desktop publishing. from PageMaker to InDesign. We have such a rich history for having incredible type control. The frustrating part of the world has been that the web is full of open standards and we don't control those standards. So a tool like Adobe Muse that wants to push the envelope and give you incredible typographic control has trouble doing that because we've got to make sure it works across all browsers, all platforms, all standards. And the integration of this Typekit Foundry in Adobe Muse to me is 1 + 1 makes at least 5. In that visual designers can now look at thousands of typefaces without any consequence that will be hosted on the web, load very quickly, and can be beautiful, rich typefaces. Now, I will caveat that because it is the web, we are constrained. Folks have asked for things like putting a shadow on a font or being able to create an outline font. Those are still limits, not so much in what we can implement, but in what is standard, let's say as a CSS effect, across all the browsers and platforms that we have to support. So we try to push that envelope, and we will continue to do it, and I'm going to show you some typographic capabilities that we've added. But we do constantly have to work with the web. Just the fact, though, that as a designer you can see in context on your design canvas these web fonts, I think is really amazing. I'm obviously excited about it. Okay, so let's close this scintillatingly beautiful site out. And what I want to do now is let you watch the magic happen again. So the nice part about what I did is I went in and I downloaded a font and I opened it up, and perhaps I would apply it to some text and then save it. The details around that font, the fonts that are being used, is retained with the Muse file, but not necessarily the typefaces. So if instead I open up a design that someone else has built, let's say someone else on my team went in and built out a site, and they used a number of these Typekit fonts, and they saved the Muse project and they put it in a folder, and I go to open that up. I'll give you a specific example. We're going to take a look at a design from one of the Muse users in the community that was part of the private pre-release, Aaron Lawrence. And he loves typography, he loves Muse, and he had a play date between the two tools, doing something that most Muse designers should never, ever, ever do, which is load 49 families and 62 different weights of Typekit and Edge web fonts in a single design. Are you ready? The reason why I'm being dramatic about this is you've seen what's in my font menu. If I go to say add and remove web fonts, we remember there's about 10 perhaps. When I pull down on file now to open up this Typekit design that Aaron has created, what happens very dynamically, so this is just telling me that perhaps some web-based edits have happened and that I can look at those. But I went in and loaded up, like I said, 62 typefaces on this page. And if I double click on that page, what happens is incredibly seamlessly. Watch this for a second. I don't mind this happening. Notice that it's not rendering yet with the Typekit fonts. We do need a few seconds, but in the seconds that you just saw, we have a conversation with the Typekit server. We look to all of those 62 weights of fonts, those 49 families, and we download them into Muse dynamically. So if I now come in and select a text container here and go to my menu, what I see is very dramatically all of these faces, all of these fonts have dynamically loaded into my design. Now this is even more magical. Many of you know I live in Seattle and the Muse team is, I live in San Francisco and the Muse team is in Seattle. So every other week I hop a plane and spend a day or two there in the Seattle office. And a lot of times on the plane I'll be working on the latest Muse demo asset. When I am unconnected, when I am 3,000 feet up in the air, I have access to all of these fonts. If I have basically opened this file before on my machine, when I jump on an airplane or I'm disconnected, I can continue to work with these designs and iterate the designs in my work. Previewing in browser actually will work as well. Publishing, of course, you need an internet connection. So at that time, we will have a conversation with Typekit. Now, as far as licensing goes, as a Creative Cloud licensee, you have access to the premium web font library and you have access to Muse. Any site that you build within Muse, when you publish that site up, a Typekit kit is going to be dynamically rendered When you publish, we ask for the domain that you're publishing to, even if you're FTPing to a third-party host. And if you have multiple domains, you can now define multiple domains, because that handshake, that conversation will dynamically happen. So anything that you publish within Muse, a Typekit kit will dynamically be created, and it will be licensed in essence for those fonts for as long as that site is live. So you can keep that up there. Even if your Creative Cloud license is not current, those Typekit fonts used in that design from the last time you published will remain relevant. All right, so that's that. It's so magical and wonderful that there's honestly not much more to have to deal with. Some other nuances, though, I do want to mention is for simplicity or clarity's sake, we've renamed the web safe fonts as standard fonts with fallbacks. We feel like that's a more accurate description, because web safe, I think, is misleading because they're incredibly unsafe. They don't tend to exist across all platforms and browsers, and they definitely don't look the same in all of those fonts, all of those browsers and platforms. So standard fonts with fallbacks gives you a good indication of what that fallback face would be if the main font is not available, and that you can select them. Now, as it was true with Edge web fonts and self-hosted fonts, anything that I'm rendering here from the Typekit library is going to load very quickly and be at the highest screen resolution for the device that is viewing it. It's resolution independent. So let's take a look at this design. I'm going to swing over into the browser and go to this page. So it's called Sessions with Typography, and as I mentioned, it's just a play date from Aaron Lawrence. And he worked with us. Many of you that were at Max last year may have seen his presentations on scroll effects, and we have some nice scroll effect samples. And the plan is at Max this year, he'll likely use this file for a talk that he's going to be giving at Adobe Max in LA in October. But it's a fun little playful site. And what you'll notice is as I get into this area here, I can click on particular categories. Let's see if I go to the serif category. What Aaron has done, which is so magical and wonderful here, is he's got a combination of really two things. There is SVG graphics. There are colors. He's got some patterns that he's loaded as background fills in essence. And Typekit fonts. That is all we're looking at. So everything here is resolution independent. It's going to scale because the SVG scalable vector graphics, like the text, will be variable. If I come in and zoom incredibly tightly into this design, they remain clean. They're resolution independent. You'll notice I can press and drag very oddly. Even though these fonts are on the diagonal, they're still web-safe fonts. They're still vector and resolution independent. Let's go back out to the full bit a little bit, and I'm just going to play a little bit more. So I encourage you to explore this. True to Aaron's passion for the product, I did ask him if he could give me something to play with. And he did, but it goes on and on and on. There's a serif section. There's a really cool combination of scroll effects and fonts, the slab serif section. And then, this is probably one of my favorite, he speaks about how types can create a theme in a design, and a little bit about that, some wisdom about using a theme typographically, but I love the way as you scroll down, everything just explodes. And then, of course, there's the heart at the bottom, giving credit to Aaron for his wonderful work. But there's another point that I really want to accentuate here and zoom in a little tightly, which is kids, don't try this at home. This is not for your average site. I need to come in and update the fonts and weights. I was actually counting them up. It's more like 49 fonts and 62 overall weights. And the point of that is, don't do this at home. Do not put that many typefaces on a single page. There is a mobile version of this site. It has the same number of typefaces, a little less artwork for phone. The point is to show, and it loads a little slow. It's a little on the laggy side. It's not something we recommend you do, but what a delightful thing to see, and just really a nice test case for all of us to understand how Typekit fonts behave. All right, I'm going to swing back and see how chat is going. I kind of went on for a while there, but as I mentioned, this is really big news. Let's see where you guys are. Okay. We've got some good folks in the house. It's great to see Mark helping out in chat. Thank you very much. Abhishek is here, so big applause to Abhishek. He's an amazing engineer that does all things type for us in the product, and I'm just incredibly impressed with the work that he's done. Better than ever. So thank you to Abhishek. Yes, nice clapping. Okay. Typekit loves Dani. Yes, it's Sessions with Typography. You can access it. I gave you a link here. It's the last one in the Resources tab. Absolutely take a look at it. Give us your feedback. Mark Thomas will tell you that the quality engineers on the team have not had a chance to catch their breath and test the file. It's from the community, so it's not really our demo asset, but it's, as I mentioned, it may be heavy in some limited network environments and such, but it's really just a proof of concept. So don't get mad. So there's a question, I may miss this, but is there a difference between Edge Web fonts and Typekit fonts? The difference is that Edge Web fonts, if you go to the Google Web Font site, there's an open consortium, I don't know why it exists, but it's an open space of freely delivered fonts that can be accessible to anyone without any licenses. The Typekit Premium fonts is over 2,000 different fonts from many, many foundries. Those have licenses related to them. Ordinarily, you would pay to use those fonts through the Typekit service. As a Creative Cloud member, it's included with your cloud license, so you don't need to pay extra for it. So it's just many, many more fonts, beautifully designed from the best type foundries in the world. There are in-browser editing changes. We can actually jump to in-browser editing as our next topic. So let me talk about that. Back in Adobe Muse, I'm going to swing out of here a little bit, and let's go ahead and open up good old Ike's Bikes, which has some updates. Okay. So on the Ike's Bikes site, I have on the About page a hyperlink. And the hyperlink is for Ike Muddy of Ike's Bikes, because of course his name is Ike Muddy. And I have published this up to the web. And let's say I want to edit it. Let's say I work for Ike and I'm in the shop and we need to make some changes. The big news for in-browser editing for this release is support for hyperlinks. Now, many of you are like, okay, so what's the big deal? Let me show you how complex implementing hyperlinks in a web browser has turned out to be. So I'm going to come over back into the browser, and I'm going to open up inbrowserediting.adobe.com. If I just go to inbrowserediting.com, it'll redirect. And I'm going to log into that site. So ikesbikeshop.com. How about SF? I'm going to log in with my credentials and sign in. So in this example, somebody else uses Muse. They've published up the site. I work for Ike's. I'm in the bike shop, and I want to be able to make in-browser editing changes in my web client without having to bug the designer. I'm going to switch over to the About page here. So I can click there. You'll notice I have access to the desktop and phone layouts here in browser editing. And I can come in and edit lots of things like, that's interesting. Are you done loading there? It's nothing like live demos. I think you're still thinking. Let's give this a second to load again. There we go. So I've got my About page. And in it I mentioned there is the link here to Ike Muddy. I think the page is still loading up a little bit. We'll let the network have a chance to catch up. And let's see, we'll be patient. What else should we talk about? Really? Hello? Hello? Loading it one more time. Okay, here's my Ike Muddy page. Notice as I roll over different areas, I can edit different things. So if I roll over the navigation here at the top, I can't edit it because this is a dynamically generated menu. It is based on the site plan, and I have a page in my site plan called Products. If I want to change this menu, I would really do that in Muse. Let's say for some unknown reason, I want to allow Ike's staff to be able to change this menu. What I would do is, instead of making it a dynamic menu in Muse, I would make it a manual menu, and I would type in all the names of the pages, and I would manually link them to those pages. That would allow me to edit it in in-browser editing. So kind of along those same lines, I can roll over this block of text here and edit the entire text, or roll over a hyperlink now. And you'll notice in the rollover, it's telling me where it's currently pointing. So of course, Ike Muddy has a Facebook page, and it's linking to that page. If I wanted to make a change, I can just come in and click to edit the link. And this is where I was even surprised when I spent time with the engineers at how complex this is. I can come in and link to one of many things. I may decide that when you click on that link, it should take you to one of the pages on the desktop design or something on the phone layout. I can define that link if I choose to. I can come in and define a telephone number. So the hyperlinks window in Muse supports things like SMS by putting SMS:. For telephone, I would put tel:, and we're making that a little easier for you. I could type in a phone number. If I were on a mobile device that had calling capabilities, clicking that link would bring up the dialer. I can also, this is kind of amazing, I can browse to upload any file that I want to be available in in-browser editing and create a link for that. By titling what that link would say, I can change the text, download my resume here. I could upload a PDF file, I could upload images, anything that I want to be able to be downloaded. And therein lies some of the complications. I can come in and define an email address, or I can point to any external link. As it stands, I've got it pointing to the Facebook page for Ike's. Let's go in and change it just for demo purposes. Let's go ahead and go to Muse. Let's just go to adobe.com. Keep life safe. When I click update, it's going to update that change. I can publish it to the web. So those changes are being made. And as usual now, back in Muse, I can pull down under sync with web version, or when I go to open up the file, if I've just opened it and that change has been made remotely, I get an indication that something has happened. And I can now see, okay, the most incredibly subtle little green underline. Is everybody ready to throw up now? I'm sorry. But notice that there's a little underscore here for that hyperlink, letting me know that it's changed. And I can choose to accept that change or skip it. I can also preview it on the page, and it'll take me to that instance. So that's the in-browser editing capability. I'm going to glance and see if there's any questions against that. I'm sure between Laurel and Mark and Greg, they're all over it, so I'm going to assume you guys are very happy. Let's go through the list of what's next a little bit. Talked about Typekit Fonts. I think we covered that well. The renaming of web-safe fonts. So this is kind of interesting, web font characters. You have the ability to select, you can read some of the release notes here. Some of it has to do with languages, but and this is one of those things. On the web, there are things known as FI ligatures. And if I'm within Muse, again, let's see if I can be simple about this. I'm going to select a font that I know has ligatures, which I think I can get by with, I think Adele will get me there. Let's just see. I'm going to do Adele Light, and we're going to zoom in large enough so you can see this. Notice I've got the words D and I there. Well, it's hard to show you this. These are known as FI ligatures. So if I say F, and then I say the letter I, notice how they join together. That's known as a ligature. If I do D-I-F-F-E-R-E-N-T, notice how the FF has a ligature. It joins it. If I say fish, the FI here is joined. The browsers out there have a limited set of ligatures that they support, but if that browser does support it and you're using Adobe Muse and you've gone into your preferences here, so Adobe Muse preferences, actually let's try site properties because it's specific to the site, and I come to content. Notice web font characters set to all here. I can come in, and if I go with that all, set. If there are ligatures in the browser supporting it, I'll know that they're supported there. One of the best parts of a jam session is that Abhishek is probably calling me a liar there in the chat, which is why I read it later. This is the way I learn from him, because we all need to learn from one another. There's nothing like a few friends to share with. All right, let's keep going through the list. So for Typekit, I talked about additional site URLs, and that basically says that if you have multiple domains that you are publishing to, you can support Typekit or create kits for all of those domains because it is domain-based. If I bring down the FTP interface and click Next here, and I want to FTP my content up, notice very subtly here I have a plus sign. I've got Ike's Bike Shop SF. I may have also bought ikesbikes.com. I can come in and add additional URLs. Notice it's just creating a comma there where I could say, okay, let's also do ikesbikes.com and so forth. So multiple domains so that the Typekit kits point to all of those domains and we know you have the proper license. Okay. Let's talk about Lightbox Improvements. So let's go to the landing page on Muse, or on Ike's Bikes. And I'm going to show you this in action first, and then we'll swing back to look at how we did it. Let's see. So here I am on my home page, and I'm going to zoom out. And let's go look at this live. So if I go back to the home page on the site, actually I should get out of in-browser editing just to make life safe here. Let's go back to Ike's Bike Shop SF. So when I load the landing page, what I've done is created a lightbox that is on by default. Some people call this unkindly a hostile takeover, and it seems to be all over the web, which is you get free content, but in order to look at it, you have to agree or answer or do something. As a designer, it's up to you to decide what the right way to implement something like this is. In this example, Ike is encouraging folks to join his mailing list. And this lightbox by default is on the page. It is a lightbox in that I can resize my page and it's always going to remain centered. I can define a dimmed background, but I have a call to action. I've put a contact form here where I can enter an email and click sign up. Or I can just say continue to the site. And in all honesty, I can just click off the lightbox to get around it. It's not a forced thing that you have to pass through. You're not making them sign in or sign up in order to go further. But you're encouraging them to draw attention there. So let's look at how I did that. Here I am on the landing page, and we've got the Ike's Bike Shop. I honestly, if I come in here and show edges in essence, if I show elements, what you'll see is most... I'm using a composition widget, so a trigger target widget, and it has in it two elements. I have the trigger here and then the resulting target. The trigger is irrelevant. I suppose to some extent if someone accidentally clicks in this corner, they're going to bring up the target. I can bury this as a little 1 pixel trigger. So I could set the dimensions. Let's just do this here. If I go in and say, you know what, you're going to be 1 pixel by 1 pixel, I'll never find it again, but users won't either when they're in the browser. They're not going to accidentally click on that 1 pixel. And what it allows me to do is have this lightbox on the canvas. Now, if we just look at the construct of the lightbox for a moment, I mentioned that I have a contact form. Now, this contact form no longer requires, I think we required an email address or your name, but we're limiting that. You can just enter email. You don't have to put your name. What's your email address? You notice there's a message that communicates if there's an error with submitting the form and a sign up button. I have a continue to site, which basically is the close box, right? So I took the close box widget and added that there. But the magic comes in if I select this widget and bring up the options panel. Notice that it's a composition widget in lightbox mode. I'm showing the target when you click, so it really doesn't matter because you're not clicking. It's sort of show target on open of page, to be honest. The hiding of the target is not really relevant because you're not going to roll over trigger or target. I want it to stay up. And all I've done is checked this box here that says Auto Lightbox. And I do have a close button that I've changed to just say continue to the site to guide people how to get out of it. So that's available for both the composition widget and the Lightbox widget, this basically auto Lightbox feature. All right, any questions on that I can answer? Looks like everybody is totally happy. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Okay, next on the Magical Mystery Tour. Let's talk about contact forms. So there are some form improvements. We try to push the needle on that. We don't have drop downs yet because they're a lot of work and I keep lobbying for them, and we may get there. But believe me, the Muse team is busy. There's a lot going on their plate. If I come into the contact page, you'll notice I have under, let's go ahead and turn off some of these edges. We don't really need them now. If I look at the form has basically radio buttons for preferred contact method, phone, or email. And this has been there. You've had the ability to define radio buttons. But when the form generates an email, and when someone submits the form to the server, and that email is generated, sent to the person that the email has been configured for, it would be hard to understand what was the question that was asked that resulted in phone or email. So if I looked at the form, I could probably guess if it said email true or email was in the list as a value that they entered. I kind of know what the question was. But what these groups allow you to do is create basically a category, a group, like a question. What is your preferred contact method? And the nice thing is that this will blow into the form so that when I receive the form, I can see the question, preferred contact method, and the answer that they selected, phone or email. Okay, so that is that. So we talked about this radio button groups and checkbox groups, and then we break that out a little bit more. Next one that I was surprised at how fun it is layer panel improvements. It really tends to bring out the true nature of you as a designer, I have to be honest, because you could go, if it's very similar to Photoshop. I've looked at source files from designers. Sometimes they're a train wreck. You've got files everywhere, layers everywhere, nothing well labeled. Other folks will label every layer group, every layer really, really well. And you now can kind of have that ability to obsess if you like. So if I come into this page, I've got a number of content elements here. If I come into the layers panel, so if I open this up, let's go ahead and pull it out and take a real look at what's going on here. First feature that I have is, notice if I'm trying to dig through my page layer here, I can hit the down arrow and get there. Well, then I got a whole bunch of groups and I'm like, okay, well, which one might this be? I do get an indication that I've selected something on the canvas, and to the right I can see what it is. But if I wasn't even sure where something was, it can be very painful to have to noodle through all of these elements to see it. So feature number one is if I hit Command on the Mac or Alt on the PC and click that down arrow, it's going to automatically open. That's kind of interesting. Let's see this. Maybe I'm hitting the wrong key. I hit the wrong key. So I'm hitting Option on my Mac, which I think is Alt on my PC. And with that key clicked, notice that every little layer group is expanding automatically. So it expands the entire group at once, rather than coming in and dialing them down separately. Feature number one. Number two, that is a lot of fun, is the ability to come in and just add intelligent names. So let's try to see if I can collapse all these guys back up again. Notice I've got a whole lot of groups. I've got one group here for Premium Saddle. What I can do is, as I'm working to organize things better, is just double click on that group and give it a meaningful name. So it might be group still Premium Saddle. I can give it a nice name. And that's true for individual layers. It's true for widgets, which can be incredibly useful. I had a whole bunch of tooltip widgets for those starter files that you saw that allow you to preview different elements. and I couldn't tell the difference between them. I went into that widget and gave it an intelligent name. I had variations on the tooltip widgets. I can put them in a library. I can save them out and share them. I can bring them back. And instead of saying widget, widget, widget with all the same name, I created a custom name for each widget that I had configured differently. So just a nice organizing productivity feature. You guys, it's 10 till on the hour, so let's see how we're doing. Not enough time, too much time. Okay, we talked about Lightbox. We talked about in-browser editing. General enhancements, the effects panel is now available as a separate free-flowing palette. I think we found that people didn't discover effects. It was a little nested, so I could go to products here, and if I wanted to apply an effect to this object, let's see, I probably need to come out to the layer group, or to the text container. Notice that the effects is here, and I can click it, and I can access bevel and glow based on what I have selected. What we've done is it now is a separate panel that you can open on the side and access it more easily. The last thing I do want to talk about is the community of widget developers that are out there. So it continues to explode. There have even on Facebook someone said, I can't believe that you're charging for widgets. Why don't you guys just bundle them or build it yourself? And I really want to argue for the case that says that the Muse team should build Muse and the community should build things like templates and widgets. And the reason is that we are all moving at the speed of the internet, and it takes a village. And having a community of folks that build out new widgets as the world evolves, something like a Lightbox, a full screen background video. It came up on us fast. The team didn't have time to stop and work on it. Christopher Watson out there in the world went in and hand-coded a full screen background video, and folks in the community quickly made that into a widget that's available. Some of this is free, some of it is paid. Honestly, if you're a designer and you're paid an hourly rate to spend $5, $1, $6 to augment your work with some of these extensions, I think is invaluable. And I'm a big fan of encouraging the community to continue to build this. So to that end, honestly, we built out a site called Nomad Dreamers. This is a series of widgets built by Chris Kellett of 123 Muse. The design is Ali Pordelli from Cookie.com. And it is a beautiful site that's showing widgets in action. I guarantee you people in the community are going to make better widgets than we did. My intention was to pay for some just to show the idea, hoping that the community would extend it and go further. So this has that background video that I was talking about. And as you come through each of these sections, it just shows you. I think new Muse users say, hey, how does this compare to WordPress? How do I get a Tumblr blog in here? Can I do e-commerce in Muse? And I believe that as long as the world continues to evolve as fast as it does, Muse will never build natively inside the app all the things that you want. We need to be extensible. We need to work with a Shopify backend, an Equid backend, a Wazela store for e-commerce. And I want, another thing I'll say is, one thing is always true, and that's that the customer is always right. If you have a customer that has not set up a back end for their store, let's say, for their products, great, you can tell them what they should use. But quite often they've already have something in play. And if Muse can be plug and play with all of these solutions as they evolve, I think it's a beautiful world. So I encourage you to check this out. The CC Learn area has step-by-step tutorials for working with it. But if you click on the Get It Here tab, it'll take you to the widget directory. And in this widget directory, we'll talk about that widget. We give it to you for free. You can preview it in the Nomad site. You can download it. And I think most importantly, there's a link that says click here for the overall category of everyone in the community that is coming in building background video widgets, for example. So once again, my goal is to raise awareness and drive people to the community so they can build that. All right, I'm down to 6 whole minutes, and I am going to see what I can do about questions that have been asked. So if you are covering chat and something came up, just kind of give me a tip here in the chat area. Laurel did mention early on that I should talk about responsive. So folks in the community have been asking for responsive. We hear you, we understand, and we are actually thinking a lot about responsive right now. It's a very good time to be involved with the Muse pre-release. We need your feedback, we need insights about what you're looking for there. As with scroll effects, implementing responsive in a free-form visual design tool really has not occurred ever before. There are coding apps, there are frameworks that are out there that allow you to define responsive sites, but to do it in Muse would be a pretty tall task. We need feedback from you, so we encourage you to join the pre-release community and help us examine how we implement it. So a direct question to Dani, can we talk about online payments? Carlos, you need to tell me more about it. And I'm glad you love me and my tutorials. Thank you. So Angie, will our widgets automatically be included in 2015 Muse? I'm not clear about that question, Angie. The Muse directory has a submission form. If you have widgets that you've made, if you want to try selling them, we make no money from the directory. It's just passed directly through to the designer, the coder that built out that widget. Our intention is to just make sure there's awareness about what's out there. So you are free to submit your content. You need to own it. You need to have created it yourself before you submit it. Makes me mad when people don't do that. But that's a great place to add your content if you want to sell it or find what other people have. All right, I have to swing back for a second to look at the presenters pod here and see if there's anything else we can address. So can in-browser editing users edit master page items? It's a good question. I've slightly lost track. The best way for you to do that is if you define elements as synchronized text on the master. It would allow you to make a change that propagates all instances of pages, but that's text specifically. So in some ways, yes, but not every way can you edit the master. There's a question about parallax or scroll effects separated from each other. Motion parallax effects versus opacity. What I'd encourage you to do is go to scrolleffects.com. That's the Aaron Lawrence site that has downloadable examples of objects that have opacity and scroll motion applied. I believe you can have the opacity happen before the motion occurs. So as you play with that T handle, you can separate them. I don't know if that totally answers your question. You can circle back to me if you need me to ask it again, but I believe that scrolleffects.com site can give you the answers to many different approaches for scroll effects. I'm looking. Is Muse suitable for integrating with InDesign and create apps for smartphones? No, it's not. The Creative Cloud is a big one. I wouldn't advocate that you take content from InDesign to Muse. They kind of stand next to one another, designing for the web in a similar way that InDesign allows you to design for print. And if you do want to generate code in Muse that you then use PhoneGap, for example, to build it out as an application, you can do that, but you've left the land of no code required and you're becoming more of a developer. But there are workflows that work there. I'm going to let Mark answer. Let me just try to copy this. I don't know if it works. But Mark, there's a question in the presenter pod about Lenovo Yoga 3 and Microsoft Surface Pro devices. I don't know if that was addressed. Could you consider an end-user customer viewable tool to combine Typekit fonts and edge fonts? Are you saying like a picker to be able to pick across all of the foundries? I could, but it wouldn't really be up to the Muse team. It's more the Typekit team to take edge web fonts and Typekit fonts. But yeah, I think Tony Stuck is a good place. I think you should talk to Tony because he's the wonder that actually created a really nice place to look for fonts. Next question. Moo Cows, is it currently an update? The options panel tab, it has been bantered about. I keep harassing some folks to encourage them to do that. The question is basically when there's so many options in a Moo Cow options panel, is there a way to organize it through either tabs or expanding areas? We understand. I'm lobbying for resources to have that happen. So I think it's towards the top of the list, there are other Moocow improvements that are happening on an ongoing basis. We now have one of our engineers really looking at Moocows and understanding it. He's gone in, his name is Jeff, and he's created a brackets extension that has code hinting and validation for Moocows. So as you're building those out, I think those tools, if you're familiar with brackets and comfortable using it, can be very important and useful. The feature you're asking for, the ability to expand and collapse sections, is different. That's more of a UI aspect in the Muse application, so it wouldn't be that engineer. I'm trying. Continue to ask for it. The pre-release forum is a great place to bug, and we'll see what we can do. Where is responsive? We're already 3 years late. I respect that. I think that when the Muse team does things, we do it really well, and we do it without compromising complexity and freedom of design. So I think you need to be patient if you can, and you need to join the pre-release so that you can help shape the evolution of that feature set. Okay, I think I've hit that, and I am totally at the top of the hour. I'm going to put back up the closing panel. You owe me one thing, which is let me know if this session met your expectations. If it fell below your expectations, you have to tell me why in the chat. Exactly, Trish. If you give a mouse a cookie, they want a glass of milk, then they need a nap, then they want to borrow your couch and some pajamas. It never ends. So the team is fired up. We are inspired. We've come a long way. I do want to reiterate we're in our third year. Muse was 3 years old last month, and we've done 12 updates, and we're going strong and continuing that. We hope to see you at Adobe Max in October, and we will continue to develop and iterate on the product. Thank you, everyone, for all your time and help and support in the community. We need all the good word that we can get out there to let folks know that Muse exists. Okay, as usual, I'm going to go grab a recording link, and we will push this up to YouTube a little later today. The sound tends to be better, and the video quality is better on YouTube. So if you want to skim back, you're welcome to do that. I'll be right back with that recording link.